Tonight, why is Trudeau destroying so many Canadian icons, including in our passport? We'll talk about that and other issues with our friend Manny Montenegrino in a feature-length interview. It's May 19th, and this is the Ezra Levant Show. This free episode of the Ezra Levant Show is brought to you by...
Tamara Lich has been released from jail.
Western separatist Tamara Lich.
Lich will remain in custody.
We have breaking news out of Ottawa to tell you about. A judge has made a decision on whether to grant bail for Tamara Lich, one of the leaders of that recent demonstration in Ottawa.
You may have seen me on the news, but there's more to my story. In my new book, Hold the Line, I share the story of the Freedom Convoy from the heart of the Freedom Convoy. It's a story of hope, courage, and coming together as a community in the Canadian way. You can buy my new book at theconvoybook.com, and in that book, you're going to hear stories from the heart of the convoy, as well as my arrest and my time in jail, like you've never heard them before. Until very recently, I've been quite silent because of my bail conditions, but now I'm ready to tell my story, my side of the story. I know the mainstream media isn't going to be fair to me, as they've already called me and my friends from the convoy terrorists.
There is increasing concern about violent online rhetoric supporting the convoy, and that those with extreme views are planning on attending.
The mayor, who made, in my estimation, just a horrendous decision to negotiate with terrorists.
So I'm launching a book tour across Canada. We'll be doing interviews, signing books, and saying thank you to all Canadians for your support. I've partnered with Rebel News to crowdfund for the cost of my book, as well as our advertising campaign. With your help, we'll be purchasing ads and billboards to spread the word about my book. We'll also be upgrading my home studio, which will enable me to do interviews all around the world. If you're a shop owner or a business owner and you'd like to have a book signing, please fill out the form on our website, which you can find here. And if you'd like to make a donation for the tour, we'll greatly appreciate it. The first 500 people to send in a donation of $200 or more will receive a free signed copy of my book, Hold the Line, My Story from the Heart of the Freedom Convoy. The last time I drove across Canada, something very special happened. Let's make that happen again. Go to theconvoybook.com. Thank you.
Shame on you, you censorious thug!
By some measures, Canada is doing worse than ever. I'm genuinely concerned about the state of civil liberties in this country. Our economy, government spending is out of control. I think there are a lot of things that are terrifying, but underneath it all, I think there's hope. I say that because the remedies that we typically reach for in this country are elections. And it looks like Pierre Poilievre, despite the hatred for him of the regime media, is taking hold. And as Canadians get to know him more and more, they seem to like him, or at least, if not like him personally, think he would do a better job than Trudeau. It's very interesting to me to see Pierre Poilievre, who I've known actually since he was in his 20s, to see him straddle being a good communicator and sort of folksy, but also a bit of an intellectual. And with your permission, I'd like to start with a video that's a few minutes long, but I want you to bear with me and go through it. It's a video of Pierre Poilievre talking about some issues I want to dig into today, talking about replacing Canadian icons and images, replacing historical people in Canada with nothing, with voids. And this is a video that Pierre Poilievre did straight to camera. I would call this an intellectual video. We're going to come right back after this video, and we're going to tuck into it with our dear friend Manny Montenegrino, who's with us for the entire show today. We're going to talk about this video, what it means about passports and symbols and Terry Fox. Then we're going to talk about bail reform in this country. We're going to talk about a surprising piece of news, Trudeau ordering 90 million more COVID doses, and other subjects, and we'll deal with them in a way that only Manny Montenegrino does. So watch this video with Pierre Poilievre, stay with us, and come back, and we'll tuck into it. Here, take a look.
Your passport. Why has Trudeau redone it to delete Terry Fox, who ran halfway across the country on one leg to fight cancer? Why did he delete the Vimy Memorial, which honors 3,598 soldiers who died? Why did he delete this beautiful war memorial, or even the Parliament buildings beyond it? Well, to answer that question, you need to get the country that Trudeau wants us to become.
The level of admiration I actually have for China, because their basic dictatorship, admiration I actually have for China, because their basic dictatorship.
Or when he said, El Comandante Fidel Castro was a larger-than-life leader who served his people for almost half a century, a legendary revolutionary and orator. Like the leaders and regimes that Trudeau so admires, he's censoring what you can see and say, including his online censorship bill, a bill so controversial that even legendary liberal author Margaret Atwood had this warning. So does creeping totalitarianism if governments are telling creators what to create. But here's the problem for leaders that want to control everything. The only way to justify it is by promising a utopia. Now, utopia is a beautiful word, but in Greek it actually means no place. You cannot promise to take people to no place unless you start in no place. Put more simply, the only way you can redraw an entire country is to wipe away the existing painting so that you can draw on a blank slate. Or as Orwell said, the past was dead, the future was unimaginable. All that was needed was an unending series of victories over your own memory, reality control. So they knock down statues of our past leaders, they delete words, they delete achievements, they even delete our most wonderful and treasured heroes, even Nellie McClung, who, along with the rest of the famous five, proved women were persons, got erased from Trudeau's passport, this by a so-called feminist prime minister. Our soldiers, our Mounties, our explorers, our champions all had to disappear. Why? Because they show that Canada is amazing, above and beyond its government. And if Canada is already amazing, how could you justify having the state bend and twist it into something completely different, as he tries to do every single day? We can have no heroes, and our history must be portrayed as a wretched pile of injustices to justify remaking everything from scratch. Instead, our national story in this passport looks now more like Justin Trudeau's personal coloring book, filled with trivial little things like Canadians raking leaves or a squirrel eating a nut. The country must be made little so that his state can be made big. There can be no heroes from the past that get in the way of the man who appoints himself the hero of the future. The regimes that Trudeau admires portray the dear leader as the only hero that could ever be. But you and I both know that the real heroes are not on state billboards or state television. They're the common people, the folks who over centuries had to wrestle control over their lives from the crown and put it in the hands of commoners. Our democratic tradition goes back 800 years to the Magna Carta, when the common people forced King John to sign the Great Charter that brought in liberty under the law. And over those 800 years, through fits and starts and many flaws, we've evolved closer and closer to a more democratic place where the people are in charge. That is a precious inheritance. It may be 800 years long, but it's only one generation deep. And if this generation, the living generation, fails to pass on what we inherited from those who came before to those that come after, then it could be lost forever. That's why it's so important to keep our common stories, our common symbols, and most importantly, our common sense. A passport is known for taking us abroad, but sometimes the most important thing, especially when it comes to our traditions and freedom, is to bring it home.
Well, joining us now to talk about that and many other things is our friend Manny Montenegrino. Manny, I was moved by that. I was impressed. I was educated. I was inspired, and I'm a bit of a cynic. Tell me your thoughts on that. First of all, great to see you.
Yeah, great. Nice being here, Ezra. I was immensely moved. Speaking to the intellect of Canadians is a very rare task for politicians, and Pierre did a wonderful job. He is absolutely correct as to what's happening. And let me add some context to it. And as you know, Ezra, I look for a pattern, I look for a historical pattern, and then I come to a conclusion as to what is really happening. Pierre is correct about the passports. All great Canadian human beings have been removed from the passport, and there were many, and the list was there. But this is just one of what has happened. There is a pattern going on, and the pattern is not a shock. It's what's to be expected from Justin Trudeau. He is a one world socialist type of person. And the only way you can get to that is you have to remove the history of Canada. Now, what has happened in a short 8 years with Trudeau? Canada is the only country that self-declared itself as genocidal. We're a genocidal country for taking Indigenous kids and bringing them to colonial schools. That is insane to say the word genocide. There's true genocide that's happened in the world, but the label sticks and it's there. We have removed great historical names from statutes, everything else. That's all a pattern. And Ezra, the pattern is quite simple. And that is, if you remove great Canadians that have done great things and diminish Canada's past and scrub Canada's past, then the only thing that remains is the state. And the state is a way forward. We will not be, Trudeau's intention is not to remove Terry Fox for a new person. And that is the slight distinction I would make from what Pierre Poilievre said. It is a scrubbing, and it's a scrubbing to keep clean. So only the state leads, only the government leads. So there will be no future leaders that we will, build statutes for, whoever they may be. There'll be no further leaders like Terry Fox that we will come to adore here in Ottawa with his statutes. It's the removal of the individual. And if you remove the individual, the state becomes supreme. Now, that's the goal. The goal is Canada should be relying, or Canadians should never look to themselves. Canadians should never look to its greatness of its people, just the state and the state's direction. And I'm going to quiz you, Ezra. Name me one great Cuban that is not a politician or a Castro. We can't think of one. Name me one. Yeah, name me one great Chinese individual that did X. It's not. It's a state.
Yeah. Well, in China, Mao had a saying: the four olds, old traditions, old beliefs, old customs.
Right.
I can't remember the fourth one, and he said they had to eradicate the four olds.
Right.
Which is a way of saying everything that the generations before us learned at great cost and over great time and wanted to give to us as the current generation. Here's the collective wisdom of all of our troubles. Here's centuries, maybe thousands of years, maybe even more than that, tacit knowledge about what it means to be a person.
Right.
Mao wanted to year zero. I mean...
not replace it. But not replace it with new. It's replacing the person, the individual. If there is no individual, then the only thing that occupies the vacuum is the state. I mean, the greatest example is North Korea.
Yes.
Name me one great North Korean historian. There isn't. You remove all people, all history. I mean, North Korea has a long history. Remove it all and just focus on not an individual achievement, but the state's achievement, the achievement by one family, the politicians, and that's all you have. And you can't look anywhere else. You can't look to your neighbor, a great Terry Fox that motivated millions of Canadians. Right. You can't look to a Nellie McCann. You can't look to these individuals that brought forth this great country. Vimy Ridge, the young men who died to make Canada, propelled Canada into a great nation. You can't look to them. They're not the guys that you should be looking to. Only look to me, Justin Trudeau, and the socialist state. We will solve all your problems. We have your backs. It's obvious. It's simple.
That's if you remember the core of the book 1984 by George Orwell, Winston Smith, the hero of the book, his job was to work in the Ministry of Truth, which Trudeau wants to set up with his various censorship regulations. Right. And his job, it's sort of crazy when you think about it, was to take old newspapers, cut out stories that are now inconvenient, and replace them with new versions of the history, so that what was the history? Well, it's whatever we say today it was. Were we at war with Eurasia or East Asia? Well, we've always been at war with Oceania or whatever. I mean, and it was insane when it was done that way, cutting and pasting, but that really is what Trudeau's doing. He's cutting out Terry Fox and Vimy Ridge from history and replacing it with, and you can't teach those things. Take down the statues of Johnny MacDonald.
Well, with the internet, it happens immediately. Yeah. I'll give you my first example. When the pandemic began and we did not have masks, and you got to remember, March, masks were not implemented till I think July. So for the first wave of the pandemic, not one of these great experts said you should have masks. Fauci, Tam, not one expert said we should be masked during the worst.
They positively said do not have masks.
Now, here is an interesting fact. I'm a research hound. I went to Canada website and there was a publication, because I'm going to shock people. This isn't the first virus that we have studied. This is actually the second coronavirus. It's COVID-2, and it's one of the dozens of viruses. And so Canadian health experts have studied. There was a study prepared and published in the Health Canada site saying that we studied H1N1, we studied SARS, masks do not work. And I had that study on that site and I had access to it. By June, July, when they implemented the masks, that study was scrubbed. I couldn't find it anymore. Wow. And I was upset that I couldn't. I said, Manny, you're smarter than that. You got to print this stuff out because these scoundrels are going to change history in real time. And it did happen on that one occasion, and there are many others.
It's why history is important. I want to show you, before we leave the subject of the void that Trudeau wishes to create, I just saw this yesterday. I want to show it to you. Tucker Carlson, who thinks about Canada a lot, and in fact was doing a whole documentary on Canada that was set to be released the week he was fired. He sent his team up to Canada, interviewed myself, David Menzies, Alexa Lavoie. I was really looking forward to this documentary. I don't think it'll ever see the light of day. But he recently did a podcast where he talked at some length about Justin Trudeau. And Tucker Carlson's an American deep in his bones. He's America first. But I think he does follow Canada because he detects something in Trudeau. I'd like to play this excerpt from the Full Send podcast for you, Manny. And I don't think most Canadians have seen this. And I'm not saying I agree with every word here, but I think Tucker follows Canada more closely than 99% of Americans. And I think that was to our benefit during the trucker issue. Many of Trudeau's foibles are not well covered by Canadian media. Tucker covers them. Here, let's watch this excerpt from the Full Send podcast. And I'd like your most candid thoughts, and maybe you disagree with them. Here, take a look.
Well, people hate Justin Trudeau there too. Yeah, if you go to like Alberta or Calgary, like you'll see hockey jerseys with like "fuck Trudeau," like signs on trucks. It's like real hate. What do you think about him?
Well, he's grotesque. I mean, he's not even like he's like Joe Biden. He's not even. I'm not mad at Justin Trudeau or whatever we're calling him. He's not even a real person. He's like a living metaphor, like our president. He is a repository for this weird, it's not even left or right, Democrat or Republican. It's so much bigger than that. It's this weird techno-based anti-human politics whose main message is you don't matter. Your life doesn't matter at all. Mm-hmm. And what matters instead is like obeying the people who are actually in charge, which is not heads of state, right? It's huge companies, honestly. Yeah. It's huge companies. And that's just like, who's the prime minister of England? Do you even know? No, they've had like 9 in the past month. No, Boris is gone.
Oh.
Right, exactly. That's the
some
point.
Woman, right? It's
100 years ago, England was the most powerful country in the world, largest empire in human history. And now it's like, who's the prime minister again? It doesn't matter. They'll get another one next month. These things no longer, we're looking at it the wrong way. What matters is the ideas and who's propagating them. And it's an international group of companies and rich people. And Justin Trudeau is just a vessel for their ambitions. Mm-hmm. He doesn't believe anything. Justin Trudeau, if he thought, it would be advantageous to him to push Nazism or Marxism, it doesn't even matter. Like, none of these things are real. It's just about control.
Yeah.
And the way you control people is by convincing them, this is like your classic kind of alcoholic parent thing, convincing them that they're worthless and they don't deserve better. Like, shut up. Who cares what you think? We don't want to hear what you have to say.
Right.
Your ambitions to like make enough money to send your kids to summer camp or retire happily, like, that's irrelevant. Like, shut up. You don't deserve it. Go kill yourself. And so they break people's spirits. So I'm telling the truth, and I can tell that that I am.
He's from Canada too.
Right. But this is happening in the United States too. I'm not just singling out Canada here at all. It's happening all over the West in every English-speaking country, Australia, New Zealand. Mm-hmm. These were real countries like 5 years ago. They're not anymore.
Yeah.
And the people have been broken. Their spirit has been broken.
That's powerful stuff. And Tucker has a unique way of putting things, but I think there's some truth to it. And it goes to what you said earlier, Manny, about demonizing Canada as a genocidal country. Everyone's a racist. Everyone's a sexist, except Trudeau himself, Mr. Blackface. And I think that there's something to Tucker when he says, telling people they are not worthy of him. He's the only worthy one. And your own goals for your life are not as important as his, carbon tax plans. I think Tucker, I might have phrased some of it differently, but I responded. I thought, yes, Tucker sort of caught a glimpse of him there. What did you think? And feel free to disagree with me, Manny.
Well, Ezra, I do disagree, but I agree with what Tucker has said about the goal. I disagree with Tucker saying that Trudeau's an empty vessel. Everyone says that about Trudeau. I have studied him just from the beginning. There was, and I regret that I didn't take this screenshot, but when Trudeau was not a politician, and I was active on Twitter, his Twitter account said he described himself as citizen of one world. Mm. All right. Now, this man believes that there should be one global government. How he became prime minister of a independent country is beyond me, but I know how. But this is the person who doesn't believe in the existence of Canada. He wants it to be morphed into this global nation. All his efforts with respect to global warming, it's all UN based. Submit your independence and your sovereignty to these globalists. Trudeau actually believes that. Trudeau is not an empty vessel. He's a vessel that's been filled to what he wanted to. There is a clip, Ezra, and it alarmed me when he fought Senator Brazo, that boxing match, and he spoke to his wife, kind of said to him, calm down. And it was one of those clips that accidentally leaked, but calm down. You're being a little too pompous or something. And he goes, I've been put on this earth for this goal. He truly believes that he's going to change Canada into this one world government. Every law that he's put forward is to get closer to that. So although I think Tucker is correct in understanding what the one world government types are trying to do, i.e. marginalize individual rights, marginalize people, remove state governments, make them not even important, let we, the WEF or whoever it may be, let us run the world and you people have nothing. Trudeau loves that idea. It's been embedded in him since he was a teen, and his Twitter account showed it. He is only too happy to be in power, to be the vessel to get Canada to drop all its independent sovereignty and be part of the globalist plan. So I agree and disagree. I agree with his context of what's happening, but believe me, Trudeau is not this empty vessel, dementia type Biden guy who's learned after 50 years, do everything so he can live his life of crime. He's actually feels that he's one of the young guys fulfilling this purpose.
Right.
Of a one globalist.
This free episode of the Ezra Levant Show is brought to you by... I want to talk to you about something because we have a new sponsor. And I came across them on my own, and I said to the team, hey guys, this looks interesting. And I was told, Ezra, they have already reached out to us to advertise. I said, come on. But it doesn't surprise me because we know some of the leaders of it. We know Dr. Julie Ponesse, PhD. She was an ethics scholar at the Democracy Fund for a year. We know Dr. Roger Hodkinson. I have interviewed him on a variety of occasions. And they are part of this new organization called the Wellness Company, and they are now sponsors of our live stream. Can you believe it? And here's my favorite part. They give a discount to Rebel viewers if you use the coupon code REBEL. Let me tell you a little bit about them. I'm going to give you their philosophy. Our medical system is failing because of oppressive government health policies and the lack of appreciation for natural approaches to staying healthy. Isn't that the truth? They shut down the gyms during the pandemic. This is where the Wellness Company comes in. By unequivocally and unapologetically standing up for medical freedom and the right to affordable health care, TWC, the Wellness Company, vision champions the right to make one's own choices for their body. They strive to build a new healthcare system that earns people's trust, governed and operated with transparency, and offering the highest quality practitioners who align at their core with the fundamental belief to put the patient first. So it's medical and philosophical. The fabric of this company has been woven together by its medical team, whose courage and bravery in their fight for medical freedom and truth, as well as their devotion to the public, will help to ensure improved health outcomes, convenient access to physicians, and lower costs of healthcare for patients. And I know two of those people personally. Dr. Roger Hodkinson, MD, Dr. Julie Ponesse, PhD. I'm excited about these folks. Check them out at twccanada.health. So it's not a .com, it's a .health. And by the way, Peter McCullough's with them. That's amazing. That's amazing, isn't it? So go to twccanada.health, but you've got to use the promo code REBEL if you want the 10% discount. And you can go directly to twccanada.health/rebel as well. So I am excited about these guys because A, I know them. B, ideologically, they're ringing my bell. And C, sounds like a necessary effort to fill a major void in our system. So I think that's the kind of thing that Avi was talking about there. If you are fit for Rebel News, we would love to have your ads. And twccanada.health is absolutely that. I'm excited about this. When was the last time you saw me do an ad read? I don't do ad reads if I don't understand and agree with a company. I'm not going to do an ad read for the NDP. They'd say, here's $100,000, do an ad read. I'm not going to do that because I don't believe in them. It's a pleasure to have an advertiser that we can actually believe in. So use coupon code REBEL, though, if you want your 10% off, and I hope you do. Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, I think what Tucker isn't fully calculating is that Justin Trudeau has sort of been groomed, first by his father and then by his father's, executors of his will and managers of the trust and the Liberal Party senior elite groomed for this position, and he deeply believes that he is not holy, but he's a cut above us all, and the destiny.
Absolutely.
So I think you're right, in a way that, say, a Jacinda Ardern wouldn't be. She succeeded, but I don't think her entire life she thought, I am the chosen one. I think Trudeau truly does. Well, listen, man.
He said that. Yep.
Yeah. I want to talk about a couple other things, and I don't want to always come back to Pierre Poilievre, but I want to acknowledge when he's doing a good job. And I think, I see the latest polls out. Conservative Party has about an 8-point lead, depending on, and this isn't just by, quote, right-wing pollsters. I think the Liberals are worried. And you have an 8-point lead. That's not margin of error time. That's a real victory, possibly even a majority government by the Conservatives. And I think one of the reasons is Pierre Poilievre is not as afraid to take on issues as, say, Aaron O'Toole, who was afraid of his own shadow, in my view. And he's not afraid to lean into the media. And this clip just a couple of days ago, I think this is a CTV reporter, but really it could be any reporter. And this is about bail. This is about criminals, especially violent criminals, getting easy bail. Tamara Leach, 50 days in jail for mischief for the trucker convoy, but violent criminals, it's a revolving door. Watch this exchange, and I'd love your thoughts on this, and let's talk about bail. Take a look.
About bail, the crime has already happened, or the alleged crime has already happened. So how can you attribute bail to this increase in crime, and not should there not be more supportive measures to prevent the crime in the first place?
Well,
You're talking about someone being on bail. They've already allegedly committed the crime. So
they're committing crimes on bail. That's the problem. The problem is, I'll give you an example. In Vancouver, the same 40 offenders were arrested 6,000 times in a year. That's 150 arrests per offender per year. Why? Because they're arrested in the morning, then they're released on bail by noon, they reoffend, they're back in jail by 2 in the afternoon, and then they're released by the evening so that they can commit their final crime before they go to bed.
It's a failure of the system to not support people who have committed crimes, gone to jail, served their sentence, and then they're committing another crime. So is this not a failure of things like social services and support for people who have committed crimes?
Are you serious?
I'm asking you a
question.
question.
Are you serious? Come on. You're telling me, no, excuse me, let me answer your question. Are you honestly saying that it's society's fault if a repeat violent offender commits 60 or 70 offenses? I think that criminal is to blame for his own actions. He is personally responsible. We're not talking about some kid who made one mistake when he was 19. We're talking about people who do 60, 70 violent offenses.
Why do those people
and then they're, because they're criminals.
But why are they criminals?
Because they do crime.
And why do they do crime?
Because we let them out early on bail.
So because they
I think we've solved the riddle here.
Because they got let out early on bail.
That's right.
They then commit the crime.
That's right.
So
that's what all the experts agree is the cause of the crime.
So had they stayed in jail the whole time on bail in jail, not on bail as you say, they would then not commit crimes.
Because they'd be in jail, so they couldn't commit crimes.
And when they get out at the end of their sentence, they're crime free?
Well, we can't guarantee that, but what we can guarantee is the period when they're behind bars, they will not be able to do crime.
Wow.
I thought he had the right tone. Let's hear your thoughts. What do you think, Manny?
The pure ignorance of that liberal media bias question just makes me irk. Look, it's very simple.
But he didn't seem malicious. Like he seemed truly not to understand.
He's wonderful. I don't know how Pierre can do it in such a positive way. I mean, I certainly couldn't, but he did a great job in answering that. I mean, Ezra, I don't know why journalists do not do 5 minutes worth of research. Crime is not a new thing. It's been happening for since man has hit the planet. And we've been
Cain and Abel.
Exactly. So we've been taking statistics. Now, Ezra, I have personal knowledge in this. A, I'm a lawyer. I understand bail. I understand the criminal law system. And B, I was with Mr. Harper in 2005. You might remember Mr. Harper was elected in 2006. A tragic thing happened on Boxing Day 2005, which helped people galvanize and were very upset. A known criminal who had a record was up for gun charges, was released on bail, and went to settle his crime on Yonge Street and shot at another person and accidentally killed this beautiful young child, Jane Kriba. Now it rocked me and it rocked Prime Minister Harper because that young innocent woman died shopping around Christmas on Boxing Day. And that young girl, she was about the same age and same everything as Prime Minister Harper's daughter. He immediately brought bail reform. Every fool knows that most of the crime are committed by the same people. Mm-hmm. It's a simple research tool. Look at it. About 80% of the crime are committed by the same 10% of the people. Bail is extremely important. Yeah. So what Prime Minister Harper did was tightened up bail. And statistically, during his prime ministership, gun deaths went down 40%. 40%. You could research it. And then when Trudeau became prime minister, well, of course, the Conservatives are mean and they're racist and whatever he said. And he removed Harper's great laws. And as a practicing lawyer, I'm saying, oh my God, it's working. This is great. What a great move. People are living. People aren't being killed. And so he removed the laws. I remember when he did, and my liberal friends were happy about it. And I'm saying, guys, this is not a good thing. Well, since Justin Trudeau has been in power, gun deaths or homicides have gone up 60%. Mm-hmm. And he's railing and ranting about guns all the time. Ezra, I have a conclusion. I have a theory. And the theory is, back to what we spoke about a little while ago, is the more, it's simple, Ezra. If somebody has an illegal gun, and we've seen nothing but 24/7 use, if you own an illegal gun, it's terrible, that person shouldn't have any bail rights. So it's that simple. Why is that not the law? It's an illegal gun. We know guns are bad. Illegal guns are bad. But I truly believe that Trudeau, this is a terrible theory, but if you can continue the illegal gun and let these people out and kill themselves, as actually happened, 60% of gun deaths have increased, then you can seize the guns of law-abiding farmers and owners. I don't, because Ezra, if you're guided by fact and you're guided by statistics, it was working. Why did they reverse it? And they didn't. And they reversed it, and there's more gun. And then every time somebody's shot in downtown Toronto or downtown Ottawa with an illegal gun on a score of criminals doing things to each other, all of a sudden we have new gun laws or confiscating somebody in Northern Ontario or Northern Quebec, the farmers' guns. And I think Ezra, I come to the conclusion it's intentional. Yeah. It's intentional.
I might have been skeptical, but my eyes have been opened to the nature of some of this by Dr. James Lindsay, who studies critical theory. And I think there's a difference between a liberal and a communist. And I never used the word communist for years other than for absolute pure communist. I thought, no, that's too far. That's like calling everyone a Nazi. But the critical Marxist approach to crime, to race, to gender, back to, there's a lot of Marxist ideas like the worse, the better. I don't know if you've ever heard that phrase. Yeah. It's a radical communist idea, which is, they would say, accentuate the contradictions, I think is another way they say it. Trudeau, I think I agree with you, likes violent street crime in the cities. It keeps those voters scared and voting for Trudeau, who promises gun control.
Right.
He doesn't control the illegal guns in Toronto, Montreal, Vancouver. He punishes lawful, safe gun owners in the prairies, hunters, farmers, ranchers, whatever, people in the rural parts. So he's winning every way. He keeps urban voters afraid, and he offers the solution, which is to pick on conservative, lawful gun owners. The chaos, he benefits from it. It goes to the demoralization we talked about earlier. I don't know. I think you're right. You know, can I?
Well, I mean,
go ahead.
As a one small point, we know that illegal guns are the source to about 90% of the gun deaths in Canada. Every Canadian, I don't care if conservative, liberal, whatever, would agree that if an individual Canadian who knows that illegal guns are abhorrent and should never be in anyone's possession, if that person is found with an illegal gun, any person, there should be simple law, no bail, and minimum 10-year sentence. That would alleviate 90% of the crime. But why is that law not in place? We all agree illegal guns, because that will solve the problem.
Yeah.
And liberals don't want to solve gun deaths, gun violence. They talk about making the border more strengthened. No, it's very simple. You have an illegal gun in your possession after hearing everything we've heard about what illegal guns do. You then get no bail, minimum 10-year sentence, and that will dry up. No young punk would be, gang banger would be having an illegal gun. He would say, hey, this is too much. Maybe I'll use a stick or something, or I don't know, my fists. But that's the solution. And it worked with what Harper didn't go that far, but it worked with the strong bail and focus on the problem, not some guy in Saskatchewan that needs guns to defend his property because the RCMP is 200 miles away.
Yeah. You know, you made me think of when I was in New York City in 2002, not too long after 9/11, it was the Republican convention, if I recall correctly. I went to a press conference, sort of a conference, where one of the speakers was Rudy Giuliani's right-hand man for mopping up crime in the city. You might recall that in the 70s and 80s, New York City was a crime nightmare. It was the stuff of terrible dystopian movies. It was a city in decline. Rudy Giuliani turned that city around. And with dramatic moves, but also small incremental steps, James Q. Wilson's theory of broken windows. You know, you park a car on the street, no one touches it. You break one window, people say, oh, it's free for all. Then all the windows are broken, the car is stripped. It's sort of the signals you send. And what I learned that day, 20 years ago, and I remember it to this day, in New York, according to Giuliani's right-hand man, often it was just one criminal who would terrorize an entire city block.
Right.
Hundreds of people, just one guy who made hundreds of people have bars on their windows, not go outside, live in fear. If you could sweep this one guy off the streets, instead of just putting him back and back and back and back on bail, you would free 100 people, change an entire neighborhood. It was just one guy all the time. And as they picked up those guys by enforcing small laws, jaywalking, whatever, people came out of their houses again. They sat on their steps again. The community emerged again, and they were free. And they didn't know at the time that it was just such a small number. As you said, 10% of the criminals doing 80% of the crime. And I'm reminded of how Giuliani mopped up New York, and we need that in our cities. We need that in Toronto and Vancouver. We also need it in Calgary and Edmonton and other places too. Listen, Manny, we're almost out of time, but I want to hear from you a quick snapper. I was shocked to learn that Trudeau is still going full tilt, buying tens of millions of doses of vaccines. Tell me the stats. I haven't been following this. This comes as a bit of a surprise to me.
Well, it's not only a surprise, but 90 million doses this year have been purchased by Trudeau, 90 million next year, and I think 90 million for another, till it's, I think, a 3-year contract, so 2000. There is only about 500,000 people now being asking for booster shots. And I think most of them are being forced in old age homes and so on. So clearly something's wrong. But there's a question that I put to people, I raise this issue. I go, well, this is a lot of money for nothing. And of course, the apologists, the liberal apologists say, well, what do you expect, Manny? We were in a crisis and Trudeau made a long-term contract, so he had to do that. And then, Ezra, here's the question. And everyone forgets the truth and the facts because it's a modern thing to do. But during the crisis, when the vaccines came out, Canada was late in purchasing the vaccines. I think we were the 58th country in line on. So we already knew that the vaccines were not going to work when we bought it. But let's assume that Trudeau did the contract at the very first day. The premise of the vaccines were quite simple. They're 100% effective. They'll get you to herd immunity. All we need is 60 to 70% of the population, 2 doses, and we're free. If we get 60 to 70%, well, in fact, we got about 80%, and everyone got 2 doses, and it didn't do anything. So the question I put to Justin Trudeau or his government is, if you knew that these doses were what you said or advertised and that they work 100% or 95% efficacy, that's all we heard, and all we need is 2 shots and we're free and we got herd immunity, then why would you enter into a multi-year contract? Entering into a multi-year contract is an admission that these vaccines didn't work from the beginning because you would need it if they worked. So in my view, again, in my critical thinking, this is a massive fraud committed by a massive fraud company that has been found guilty with the biggest fraud in history. And simply, they did an arrangement to enrich certain people and probably politicians. But why would you enter into a multi-year contract of a drug that's supposed to free you in the first year?
Yeah. You're referring to Pfizer paying a $2.3 billion fine for deceptive practices. We still don't know which company it was, paid $50,000 to bribe the boss of Unifor Union. I think it's shocking that has not been shone a light on. I wonder if it's because is it really true that the head of Unifor was the only person in the country in public office who took a $50,000 cash payoff? I doubt he was the only one. He's the only one who so far has been caught. And the fact that the rest of the establishment has not named the company.
I got to give it to Pfizer because they are the largest fraudulent criminal fine in history, and that was, I think, a dozen years ago. But I think they learned something, and they learned how do we do it better, and how they did is they co-opted the media. Every ad I watch on TV. So once you got the media on side and you do your I'll call it legal bribery by buying tons of ads. This is why Fox News probably got rid of Tucker Carlson. He looked at it and said, hey, why are we on the side of Pfizer when we should be on side of citizens? So I got to give it to the big pharma. They had the doctors, they had the politicians, but you know what? If you get the media on your side, you're never going to see a bad report. Yeah. Brilliant.
Yeah. I hate to say it, you're right. Manny Montenegrino, always a pleasure. Thanks for spending so much time with us. Have a great weekend and look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Thank you very much, Ezra. All the best.
Right on. There you have it. Manny Montenegrino, CEO of Think Sharp. That's our show for today. Until next time, on behalf of all of us here at Rebel World Headquarters to you at home, good night and keep fighting for freedom. This free episode of the Ezra Levant Show is brought to you by...
Many journalists are really just advocates for woke ideology. They don't report the facts, and they simply don't care about our fundamental freedoms. Well, we're doing something about that.
What happens when the journalists themselves are really bought and paid for by the government? Can they possibly criticize the government freely? The law in a rule-based society is the need for independent news.
Without pushback, get away with it all the time. And I think that is the key, is to push back and call them out of the box. Everyone kind of wants to be a YouTuber or a media star these days or whatever. And people always ask me, well, how do you do it? What do you do? What's the secret? All that stuff.
No matter what type of journalism you're doing, whether you're doing the advocacy journalism that Robbie does, whether you're doing the investigative reporting that Sheila does, some of the gonzo journalism that David Menzies does, or whether you're working in fiction like CBC, no matter what, you are telling a story.
It was great. It was very informative. I learned a lot of stuff. I took so many notes, so it's definitely good to be here.
I'm really appreciating the diversity of the speakers. They all contribute really specific details on what to do as an aspiring journalist.
It's been absolutely mind-blowing from start to finish. Firstly, beautiful hall. We've been stuffed. It's like Thanksgiving dinner every night, so that's amazing. And the only thing that beats that are the people around us, the company, some amazing and unique individuals.
The journalism conference has been great. I met many prominent figures in this field and I got great advice.
It was a really good conference, very good to meet all the lovely people here to get some inspiration and some experience.
Our speakers, oh my gosh, they've been absolutely stupendous. Been learning so much. So grateful to have been invited to come. Thank you.